everybody, it's AJ back again, and today we're going to be talking about the Cloaker. Thanks to a fantastic request from somebody. The Cloaker is an aberration. It's large. It's got a huge affinity for shadow, and you find them in the deep Underdark or occasionally as mercenaries working for their own twisted reasons for some sort of evil lord. They are chaotic neutral. They're solitary for the most part. They tend to go their own way. They only really come together to talk about matters of their territory or whether they should band together and go somewhere. But it's really as a collective sort of what should we do, and then they just sort of disperse and go their own way. Anyway, for their stats, they've got an armor class of 14, natural armor. They are composed of gristle and sinew and muscle and weird alien organs. They are an aberration from the far realm, from another realm of existence. They are their physiology makes little sense. Their organ structure makes no sense. It's unknown exactly what they feed on, and for the most part, nobody really knows what their motivations or their natural language is. They communicate subvocally in a subsonic, ultrasonic sort of way, and they've learned that this can disrupt beings from the material world which hear it. In previous editions of the game, this has been expanded on to being 3 levels of voice, of moan that they can use against others. In general, when you're in their territory, it will start to affect you by making you on edge, uneasy. You'll be anxious, may suffer panic attacks, and generally be listless, lethargic, and moody, kind of like you're afflicted with teenager disease. And the closer you get to their territory, the worse it gets. The Cloakers will be able to generally detect you getting into their territory before you arrive. And when you're in their territory, they will have already set up some sort of a trap so that when you see them for the first time, they will have employed their ability to look like an ordinary cloak. They are large, dark, mantis-like beings. Their head is mounted on their belly, and their back has a line of secondary eyes that look a lot like buttons, and their claws on the top of their wingtips look a lot like bone clasps, so they look a lot like a cloak. A fact they take advantage of. And it's advised, if you find a cloak in the Underdark somewhere unattended, to maybe hit it with a rock or prod it with a 10-foot pole to see what happens. Don't stick it with a spear. You may have actually just damaged somebody's cloak. But yeah, there's a good chance that it could be a cloaker. They are a rare beast though, so it's probably likely the adventurers have never heard of them. When they are revealed to be not a cloak, they immediately leap to attack, and they will target one individual at a time and basically go on an all-out attack. Once they've targeted somebody and grabbed them, they will use their moan ability to frighten off everyone else. So basically this is a 60-foot ranged blast of subsonic moaning, which anybody that can hear this that isn't an aberration must succeed on a DC 13 wisdom saving throw or become frightened until the end of the Cloaker's next turn. If the creature's saving throw is successful, it becomes immune to that effect for 24 hours. In previous editions of the game, there was 3 levels of this moan that it could use, all the way up to completely stunning and paralyzing somebody, as it basically rattles the bones inside that person's brain case and stuns them into submission, like a hypnotic trance. But in this case, it's just a frightening moan attack. They also have a whip-like tail with barbs on it. It's +6 to hit. It's got a reach of 10 feet, and it does 7 points of slashing damage, and they can use that to fend off anybody who's coming anywhere near them. They've got 2 attacks in a round. One is a bite attack, and the other is with its tail. When it attacks with its bite attacks, +6 to hit, one creature is bitten for 10 points of piercing damage as it latches onto them. If the target's larger or smaller, the Cloaker then wraps and envelops itself around them. And if the Cloaker has advantage against the target, it attaches to the target's head, and the target is blinded, unable to breathe while the Cloaker is attached. So otherwise it will still attach to somebody, but it may not have latched onto their airway. It's only if it has advantage on that first attack. And it will make sure that if it's attacking from a hiding position or it's been disguised as a cloak and hasn't been uncovered as such, it may have advantage on that attack. or if it's attacking from the shadow, which it's very, very good at. I'll get to that in a second. So the target's blind, unable to breathe, or just wrapped up in this thing. While attached, the Cloaker can make this attack only against the target and has advantage on the attack roll. So the Cloaker can detach itself at any time by spending 5 feet of its movement, and the creature, including the target, take an action to detach the Cloaker by succeeding on a DC 16 strength check. So it can basically, another person or the target himself can tear themselves free with a tremendous act of strength. This Cloaker, of course, is very strong. It's got a strength of 17. It's got a dexterity of 15 and a constitution of 12, so physically it's superior to pretty much most humans. It's got an intelligence of 13, wisdom of 12, and charisma of 14. So very intimidating, very smart, wily, cunning creature. Highly intelligent in their own right, in their own knowledge base and things, but unfamiliar with the material world. And their motivations are, well, pretty much psychotic and evil, and self-serving. They're quite xenophobic, although they do work in their own sort of loose-knit society. They can also use their ability to manipulate shadows to create phantasms, basically shadow mirror images of themselves, like the spell. They're disrupted, of course, by bright light, particularly magical bright light. So it's fairly easy if you've got access to some sort of light-emitting spell or some such to deal with this problem. Otherwise, they'll create 3 shadow phantasms of themselves, which you have to beat the equivalent of the Cloaker's armor class of 14 or its saving throws, basically exactly the same as the Cloaker's. If you manage to hit these things with a spell or a physical attack, they disappear. Otherwise, you can't tell them apart from the normal Cloaker. So they're quite effective that way. Very confusing and very disorientating in combat as they fly around you. On the ground, the Cloaker has got a speed of 10 feet. It's got a quite flat profile, so it's easily able to scuttle into cracks and crevices and caverns to get away from somebody, and it will pick an environment where it can do that if it needs to get away in a hurry to become a reoccurring threat. Otherwise, they've got a flight speed of 40 feet, so they can chase down somebody if they're running away from them quite easily by just sort of flapping and gliding across the ground. They have no height limit as well, so they can plunge and plummet and fly around as agilely as any bird of prey. So they're quite adept and freaky creatures, and I certainly wouldn't want to come across one. Society-wise, Cloakers split into the ordinary Cloakers that are listed in the monster manual here. There's also Cloaker Lords, which are a much rarer breed, that are much stronger and larger. They have horns on just above their red eyes on their belly as well. And generally tougher and larger of body. These are thought to be more mature Cloakers who have been around for a long time, and they play a vital role in breeding. It's believed that what they do, normally Cloakers will reproduce asexually. What Cloaker Lords do is they eat another Cloaker and then essentially split apart and become many new Cloakers. It's alien and weird, what can I say? There's also Cloakers which have gone into the Shadowfell, and they've absorbed additional shadow powers. Those are called Shadow Cloakers, and they're different from Shadow Lords, and they don't really associate with each other. But normally Cloakers will group together loosely over a wide area, with a Cloaker Lord basically being the alpha leader, the pack leader, over a wide area, which is unusual for such xenophobic creatures that generally don't cohabitate with each other. So it's a little bit like great white sharks, the biggest one feeds first sort of thing. But yeah, they have their own language and such and motivations, which are quite alien to everyone else. They generally don't communicate unless it's a highly intelligent spellcaster who's conversing or making an effort to converse on their level. But psychics can't really penetrate their psyche either or understand what their language means. They are capable of reproducing deep speech or a few words in undercommon, but they just generally won't communicate with somebody unless it's for their own reasons. So they'll make it known that they're available for mercenary work or some such, but they won't tell you what. So yeah, they come together in groups called conclaves, and generally they only do that to determine if they're going to move to a new area, or all of them attack a certain group, or band together for mutual defense or aggression. That's typically what they do, or to undergo some sort of reproduction cycle. and they make their environment quite intimidating and unpleasant for everything else through their use of those intimidating moans. And otherwise, they're just basically opportunistic feeders and predators and sadists of anyone who comes into their area. So, yeah, there's more information on cloakers, or particularly the earlier versions of cloakers, but it's not that relevant to its alien stuff to do with their reproductive cycles and things like that, and it's not really that important for the game. Typically, though, cloakers are just a very good solo encounter that's quite tricky, particularly if you're dealing with difficult terrain where the cloakers have access to you, but you can't necessarily chase them down, particularly if you're restricted in your use of ranged weapons. So if you're scaling up a cliff face or some such like that, cloakers are a deadly threat. If you're traversing ground which has got lots of pit traps or crevasses, or if you're going over top of some spiky stalactite and stalagmite terrain, or if you're walking through a forest of toxic spore producing or perhaps mobile fungus full of shriekers and violet fungus and things like that, cloakers are a complication that can make your encounter, your day underground, really bad. So yeah, that's cloakers for you. Thanks for listening, everybody, and I'll be back with another video shortly.
So let me be your source of inspiration. Bass rumble through your spine, feel that vibration. This is the solution to the problems that you're facing, and this could be your ride to any given destination. Giving you all of my energy, ain't got no time to think about an enemy. Let go to anyone who's been a friend of me. Get down with your boy.